or a squid. But no cephalopod that Joss Merlin or any of the wrecking crew had seen. No natural creature could have that amount of teeth. The light bouncing off it was strange. It didn't gleam the way gold should. It was almost as though the golden statue was soaked in the natural November dawn sunlight and then thrown it back, corrupted, unnatural. A false light. A light that imparted a strange glow to the albino's sickly white skin, his eyes burning like the polished and faceted rubies embedded in the face of the statue. And the chilling, beatific smile that broke out on Francis Davy's face was something Joss Merlin never wanted to see again. And he would make sure of it. "Take him!" he screamed, his shaking paw of a hand trembling with as much hatred as fear. As his men hurried to obey, he turned back to the flotsam and jetsam on the beach, grunted in satisfaction at the sight of the coils of rope spilling from one of the brig's crates. He grabbed one, fighting the urge to drop it in revulsion at its slimy texture. He turned and strode along the strand towards the 3 spars that had been flung far from the body of the wreck to form a natural A-frame in the sand. He smiled grimly as he formed a loop at one end of the slimy rope. Within moments, he had fashioned a crude but serviceable noose. The wreckers dragged the screaming albino over to the makeshift gallows. Joss smiled when he saw that Davy still had the gold statue of that octopus-like thing in his hands. His fingers were rigid, fixed around the wings that sprouted from the flurry of tentacles on the creature's back, as though he was determined to take it to the grave with him. That can be arranged, Joss thought. "Too far, Francis. You've gone too far. You've brought the devil himself upon us. But we'll not kill for the Dark One, nor for his foul gold." The noose was tightened around the albino's neck. Even now, watching the other end tossed over the makeshift gallows and knowing what would happen, he still would not relinquish his hold on that statue. Joss himself pulled on the other end of the rope, his huge bulk and strength making assistance from his men unnecessary. When Davy was hoisted a clear 5 feet in the air, Joss tied the rope around the lower spar and stood back to watch the vicar die. The wreckers watched in grim satisfaction for a full 7 minutes. That's how long it took the albino vicar to die. For his legs to stop kicking, for his writhing to slow and cease. And all this time, even though the spars creaked and protested, they remained firm and true, a solid gallows. And the light from the autumn sun rose stronger and brighter with each moment that passed. Davy's body slumped, but still his hands remained rigid around the gold statue. "He'll take that to hell with him," Jem muttered. Joss nodded in silent agreement. Then he turned to the crew. Behind them, the tide continued to batter the remnants of the Inbocker. The shrouds had unfurled from the spars and were moving across the shattered hull of the brig, as though trying to hide the corpse of the vessel from the accusing glare of daylight. "What now, Joss?" Mark Gerald, the man who had raised the false lights on the cliff top, stared at him with searching eyes. "Do we take this accursed gold?" "No." "Leave it where it lays," Joss answered. "Let the sea take it. And him!" Joss turned and walked along the shoreline, stepping past the open crate, fighting the temptation to look within. There were things inside that glowed with that same hideous, unnatural light emitted by Davy's carving. Soon the tide would roll in and reclaim it, he told himself. Banish it to the depths from whence it came, forever dim its false light. At least now they were free from Francis Davey. And now he, Joss Merlin, was the true master of the wreckers. He smiled in anticipation of the celebratory drop of brandy at Jamaica Inn. The wind stiffened, swaying the body of Francis Davey. The rope stretched with its weight, the spars bowing and finally collapsing. Joss Merlin's men halted and turned to stare. Then they turned back, grinned at their true master, and ran on to join them. The albino vicar had landed face down, his dead hands pressing the icon firmly into his chest. An icon, an article of faith. For it was faith that had sustained Francis Davey, the albino priest of Altanum, all his life. Through the bullying he had suffered in his younger days, the revulsion he had seen on the faces of women, the contempt that had driven him to the church, and to find that even God had no answer for him. Then he had found a new faith, a promise of life eternal, a life he knew the Christian God could not provide. The noose unraveled. The green tentacle that Joss Merlin had taken for slime-encased rope slipped from the albino's neck. It burrowed under the sand, seeking the light from the buried gold icon that still burned brightly in the darkness caused by Davy's body. Francis Davy's body jerked several times as the tentacle did its work. Then his eyes opened, burning brightly red, with the same intensity as those rubies in the gold icon. He got to his feet and looked downwards at the sand. The icon and tentacle had gone. He smiled, knowing they truly hadn't vanished. He stroked the sharp-edged bulge in his abdomen and stared at the welcoming darkness of the ocean and the lights beckoning. Light that only he could see, shining brightly from the depths of the ocean. He stared at the sickly yellow disk in the sky and sneered. False light, he spat, and made his way to the sea.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.